If it's back up, so be it.
It's afraid of the fly.
I'm not afraid of it. I'm just annoyed by it. All right. So the Feast of First Fruits it's a little unclear as to when exactly that one's supposed to be, so we're not going to worry about that. Then we have the Feast of Weeks, which is, so remember this unit of 7. All right, so the Feast of Weeks. You shall count 7 full weeks from the day after the Sabbath on the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. Count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. You shall present a grain offering of the Lord. So again, this is sort of why we're connecting the first fruits back to the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is because now it's connecting Pentecost to that. So Pentecost happens 7 weeks after Passover begins. So 7 sevens, a week of weeks, if you want to say it that way, because the word in Hebrew for week and for 7 and Sabbath that's the same word. So, you shall have a 7th. Take a 7th. Take 5, take 7. So you've got a Sabbath of Sabbaths.
In your little chart over there,
yes.
Will weeks be added after
That's
Passover?
Pentecost. Pentecost is the Feast of Weeks. How many weeks? 7 weeks.
Oh. Okay. It doesn't say that in my book.
That's okay. Some of these have several names. So, Pentecost, they wouldn't really call it Pentecost because Penta is a Latin root. They didn't have Latin back then. So they would have called it the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Sevens. So when you have a 7 of sevens, 49 days, then you have the Feast of Pentecost on the 50th day. So on the first day of the new set of weeks, you have the Feast of Pentecost. So you have 7 sevens, and then on the first of the new, then you have a new day, a new week. Yeah, actually it is. So it's 7 weeks after Easter is Pentecost. It works spot on. So 7 weeks. So when Jesus rose from the dead, he was with them for 40 days, which is another important number within Scripture. 40 days and nights of rain, 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days and nights tempted in the desert, 40 days between his resurrection and his ascension. And at his ascension, he told his disciples, stay in Jerusalem until you're anointed with power from on high, and then go and be my witnesses. So they went back and they stayed in Jerusalem. They're in the upper room. And then on the 10th day after that, on the day of when the day of Pentecost had come, this festival, they were all gathered in one place, and then the Holy Spirit came upon them with a mighty rushing wind, and the tongues divided like fire, and they began to speak in all these other languages. Okay. Pentecost was part of the Harvest Festival.
Did they have food there?
Oh yeah, the whole name of a festival is a feast.
Oh, okay.
You get a feast day thing.
They were the early Lutherans.
Right, you got to have a potluck. You got to have a.
We have a good time here.
You got to have a potluck. So, what's interesting is, and I've probably gone over this before, but I'm going to do it again anyway. But so, when you plant, you take seeds and you spread them out, right? And then when you harvest, you bring everything back in to the barn. You gather it all back in to one place. At Pentecost, this was one of the, there were 2 pilgrim feasts that they had to celebrate in Jerusalem, Passover and booths. But I remember reading somewhere also that Pentecost was another pilgrim feast that they would gather in Jerusalem for this, which is why you have gathered there in Jerusalem Jews from all over the world, Parthians and Medes and Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Cappadocians, Pontus, Phrygia, Asia, parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and so on and so forth. I almost have that whole thing memorized. you've got them all in all those different places, all gathered into one place. So it's like you got Jerusalem here, and you've got all these devout Jews gathered there into Jerusalem for the festival of Pentecost. And what do they hear? They hear the mighty acts of God in their own language, and 3,000 are baptized that day, and then the gospel goes out from there. Because all those people gathered into one place who have now been baptized, what do? They go home. And you're never going to believe what happened on my trip. Think about it. They get home, they go back here, and they bring the gospel with them. And like a gospel pandemic, you can't stop it. So they take it back with them. And so like when Paul goes on his missionary journeys and stuff, or there are people in these places who are saying, we know the gospel, we've heard the gospel, come to us, teach us, tell us more. The gospel has already arrived in those places. They know about Jesus because some who were there on the day of Pentecost or who traveled there afterwards and traveled home, there's lots of travel going on, have taken that back with them. The really great connection I love to see in this is you have them all gathered in one place, and they hear all these different languages, but the languages are overcome. The differences are overcome. They can all hear the mighty acts of God in their own language, gathered together under one language, which is the opposite of the Tower of Babel, where they were all in one place with one language, and they defied God, and so he sent them out and confused their languages and populated the world that way. But on the day of Pentecost, the day that brings together Jews and Gentiles, again, as into the one church, into the one people of God and these things, he gathers them all back together into one place and overcomes the language differences. Kind of cool, huh? I like that one. And that being on the new beginning of the weeks of Sabbaths. You got the 7 Sabbaths and then a new beginning on the day of Pentecost, that 8th day, which is pretty great. All right, they very specific about all the different ways to celebrate that.
Didn't even have a computer to do that. They all heard in their own language.
Yeah, so it's almost like there were two different miracles that day. First, that not only were they able to speak in all the languages, but then the people also heard in all the languages. So I think it's kind of going. There's kind of 2 ways it's going. That you had 12 disciples speaking in different languages, but then you had maybe more than 12 languages, people of more than 12 languages hearing in their own language still. And so I think that's, I'd love to talk to a linguist sometime and look at that list and say how many different languages are represented there in that list of. Probably going to get taken off of YouTube now for a violent act on violence on YouTube. Yeah, demonetized. All right. Yeah, so pretty great. All right, so then the weeks of celebrating go on. Then we have the Feast of Trumpets. Speak to the people of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall observe a solemn rest, a memorial, proclaimed with the blast of trumpets, a holy convocation. Do no ordinary work, and you shall present a food offering to the Lord. So on the 7th, so maybe on the first day of the Sabbath month, the 7th month, you have a holy convocation. Whether it's a Sabbath or not, you get a day off, and you do no work, and present a food offering to the Lord. And what's interesting is, how do you participate in the Sabbath day? Do nothing. That's it. Pretty easy, huh? It's like at the shores of the Red Sea. What does God tell the people of Israel? It is only yours I will fight for you. It is just yours to sit and be quiet, and I will fight for you. you know, and so is our salvation. What is it ours to do? Just receive it. I'm going to do it. God's going to do all the verbs. He's going to do all the doing, and you receive it. That's how you participate in it, which I think is lovely. All right, then you have the Day of Atonement, and which is 10 days later. So on the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. A holy convocation. You shall afflict yourselves, so you shall fast, and present a food offering to the Lord. Do no ordinary work, and make atonement. And we've talked about that Day of Atonement. It's the scapegoat and the different, the priest goes into he makes atonement for himself and then for the altar and for the sanctuary and then goes into the Holy of Holies and all those different things. And then you have the Feast of Booths on the 15th day of the 7th month. And for the 7 days is the Feast of Booths of the Lord. So the 7th month becomes sort of that festival month. You've got the Feast of Trumpets. And then on the 10th day, you've got the Day of Atonement. And then 5 days later, you have a week of the Festival of Booths. And on the first day, you have a holy convocation, do no ordinary work. And for 7 days, present food offerings. And on the 8th day, have another holy convocation, present a food offering to the Lord, do no ordinary work. So you have and somewhere in there, another Sabbath is going to fall. Because it may or may not start on a Sabbath. It might start on a Thursday. So you've got that day of solemn assembly, then you've got the regular Sabbath, and then you've got the 8th day of the festival, and then you got another Sabbath right after that. So these are the times are dedicated to the Lord. The time is not your own. So these.
What month does all that happen? Now, what months do all
So that's like August, September, usually is when the Day of Atonement and these are usually happening, I think.
Yom Kippur?
That's the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Yep. And the Festival of Trumpets is Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you have all those. So it just that pattern of worship and that regular structure of time and things, it's really a wonderful ordering of the year that starts over then. It keeps rotating through those things. Chapter 24, you've got lamps and holy bread. So you've got the lamps that they need to keep burning on the 7 lampstands in the holy place. You've got the showbread that they need to keep there before the Lord, and then the priests eat